Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I'm your host, Wolu. A reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday, usually between 1 and 3 p.m. However, because the baseball game is taking place early this afternoon, our Toronto Blue Jays will be taking on the Red Sox for the finale of their 3-game series here at Scotia. 4-game? I don't know, man. I don't watch baseball. I'm going to pretend like I did. I watched it last night, at least. Unfortunately, they lost. But usually we're 1 to 3 p.m. Today, we're 10 to 12. And I'm joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. And we're also joined by a special guest. Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, we've got former Toronto Raptors forward and Toronto cult hero, Malcolm Miller, joining us. Thought we would start Game 6 game day with some championship energy. Malcolm, how are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
How you guys doing? I'm great.
Great. Malcolm, first of all, congrats on becoming a new dad. I know just from following you on social media. I believe Maya just turned 6 months recently. What's life been like since last October?
First of all, appreciate it. And it's been a lot less sleep. I can say that for sure. I mean, I'm enjoying it though. It's awesome. Every week, every month is something new. It's an amazing journey. We just moved into a new house, so getting her and my dog get used to that new surroundings is amazing.
Yeah, I believe I was listening to the morning show when you were talking to Blake, Ailish, and JD. You named your dog North, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Was this something after the championship, or was that like just during your time here in Toronto?
It was actually after the championship. So we had always wanted a dog, and we were just looking around back home. This was probably close to a month after the championship, and we finally found a dog at one of these rescue shelters. And I was looking like for something to put down on the floor for the dog, so like she wasn't like shedding or peeing all over the car. And the only thing I had in the car was a We the North towel. And so I was like, how about North? And my wife was like, yeah, that's perfect. So we ended up going with North. And she's been to Toronto plenty of times, so the name fits perfectly.
Yeah, and I've been noticing, and obviously we'll get into this Raptors-Sixers series, get your thoughts on it, because I know you've been watching closely. I know the Twitter fingers have been strong during games. But, since we've been talking all week about the Raptors trying to pull off this historic comeback, I want to talk to you and ask you about a comeback that you were involved in when you were here in Toronto. One of my favorite all-time Raptors games, when you guys came back from 30 points down to beat the Dallas Mavericks during that 2019-20 season, and then you played a huge role in that, especially in the fourth quarter. Take us behind the scenes. What do you remember about that 30-point comeback just unfolding?
Well, yeah, I remember going in and Nurse saying, like, fight like hell, like, get the energy up, and let's see what we can do. Let's here's an opportunity. Let's see what we can do and come back with. So we go out on the floor, and I want to say as soon as we get out there, Kyle's still, like, going off. Like, Kyle hits his first three. We get another stop. Kyle hits another layup. And then at that point, it slowly just becomes like, all right, well, clearly Kyle's about to score all of these points. So let's do whatever you can. You see everyone screening for Kyle. You see full court pressure. Everyone's trapping. Everyone's playing with a lot of energy. And it's like slowly chipping away. Not once during that whole comeback was I ever looking at the score. I think everyone was so focused. All 5 players on the floor were so locked in together that it was just, what's the next play? How do we get a stop? How do we score as quick as possible?
Yeah, and I feel like that game really reflected that whole season. Like, there was just something special about that 2019-20 team coming off that championship season. From the outside, it just seemed like you guys just reached another level of confidence. Like regardless of what the deficit was, who the opponent was. Like, we remember the 15-game win streak. Did you feel the same, like, inside that locker room, that it was just a different team after that championship?
Oh yeah, the confidence in the locker room was through the roof. I mean, everyone knew, when you win, you have the target on your back. And then at the same time, we still had a chip on our shoulder because, no one really was giving us a chance the next year. Like, there was questions around, how will we survive with losing so many of our top players. But, I mean, when you have a full team locked in for a championship like that, and the team was so deep at that point that, we knew we had players that could step up to the plate.
Yeah, Malcolm, listen, that run obviously is really cemented in our minds. And I think that team and that ethos of the Raptors was something that we really respected about, not just the championship year, but even going back before that. And of course, the year that you guys were defending the chip too. It was just, um, it's something that you admire about the Raptors. And, I think that was the thing when the Tampa season was like, wow, I hope they don't lose this identity, right? Because that was something that was so special when you talk about team culture. Like, that was Raptors culture. And we finally have seen it back here in Toronto once again in this series. And, you mentioned, Nick Nurse, and I kind of wanted to know. So he's had this pattern now where, you know what, you guys were down 1-0 against Orlando. You guys come back. I mean, look, realistically, you guys are much more talented than our Orlando team, but you guys were down 2-1 against Philly. You guys come back. You guys were down 0-2 against Milwaukee. You guys come back. And then even going back to the bubble, the Raptors were down 0-2 against Boston, and you guys come back. And now they're down 0-3, and they're trying to make this historic comeback. What is it about Nick Nurse's coaching that kind of allows this to happen?
I mean, I'm not sure if there's anything about the coaching going down, but the coming back part is definitely just keeping that next play mentality. We talked about that a lot in the locker room and really making adjustments and responding to getting hit in the mouth. You would like to stop the bleeding, stop the run, stop the losing early. But, I mean, it's basketball. Stuff happens. Teams get hot. Game plans break down. But it's how you adjust and come back from that. And Nick Nurse, the Raptors, I mean, the guys in the locker room, everyone as a whole has been able to embrace that mentality that it's like it's not over until it's over.
Yeah, and, I heard when Thad Young was brought to the team, and obviously Thad's been in the league like 15 years and played all like 7 different franchises and tons of coaches over the years. And he was mentioning, he was like, he came here and he saw the game plans and he was like, wow, this might be one of the best game plans I've ever seen. And like, look, as people on the outside, it's hard to appreciate that, right? Because it's like, it might just sound like a new player trying to, make nice with the fan base or, make nice with the coaches. But is there something in that where, because of the way the coaching staff under Nick Nurse like prepares the team, is there that extra sense of confidence because of maybe how, many counters or anything like that? Because I remember like that first round series you guys played against the Brooklyn Nets in the bubble in that first round. I mean, again, that team was really outmanned, and you guys were going to sweep them pretty much no matter what. However, like you guys had like 5-6 different defenses per game that you would shuffle through to stop like Karis LeVert or stop Jared Allen, and it was truly impressive to watch the preparation. So, can you speak to like the confidence that the players get from Nick's coaching game plan?
Oh, definitely. I mean, all the coaches, have a part in it. When I was there, it was Sergio as far as offense. It was Coach Griffin as far as defense, and even my earlier year with Nate. Like it's from the top down. Everyone understanding the game plan and understanding their roles and everybody else's roles. I feel like that's one of the biggest things. Like it's one thing to know what you're supposed to do, but it's another thing to know what you do, what the next man does, what the man behind you does, how the rotations work, and what the goal of it is. A lot of the schemes and everything is about making people uncomfortable. When you look at the double teams on Embiid, when you look at even when Harden was with the Rockets, how Nurse was doubling him. It was just making people do different things and making people and different players uncomfortable in certain situations. So, I mean, it builds a level of confidence when you know exactly what you want to do, why you want to do it, and if that doesn't work, how you want to switch it up and for what reason. So, I mean, everyone acting on one accord and everyone having the same mentality, that's big time.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring it up that that Houston game against James Harden, because I think I'm remembering the one you're referring to there. It was, I believe, at Scotiabank Arena, and you guys ran this like very strange strategy where it's like anytime James crossed half court, it would sound like a double team. Like it doesn't matter if he was standing in like, between the sideline and half court, a double team will come to force him to get rid of the ball. And I've never seen a team like play 4-on-3 basically the entire game. And I was thinking, because I think the Raptors ended up losing. I think Ben McLemore had like 7 or 8 threes or something like that, which is the price you pay with that strategy. But I was thinking after the game, I was like, did we just see Nick Nurse experiment for an entire game? And I kind of want to know that too. Like, will the Raptors not necessarily throw a certain game, but just like try something out in the regular season with the explicit intent of using it in a playoff setting just to see if it works.
For sure. I mean, of course, every game plan is set to win, and every game plan is set to, making a player uncomfortable. But, yeah, those are the type of things you want to see. I mean, if you're going to play a team, 7 games back to back, then you want to be able to throw as many options, as many different strategies at that player as you can. And so, those are the type of things that, you have to do and have to prepare for. And hats off to Nick Nurse for being able to do those type of things and having that type of mentality. Even when I was there, my rookie year when Houston was on that 17-game win streak, we threw different looks at him and, trapping him at half court, playing him one-on-one, forcing the drive, and immediately rotating off of him, sending him to the help, switching off him on the 5-man and trapping from there, trapping from the nail, trapping from the closest man from the corner, like all those different looks, when you're an offensive play, you start to wonder, like, all right, where's the player coming from next, instead of focusing on, okay, how am I going to get this bucket? What's the next play, and things like that. And that's when you can get a player thinking like that. That's when that's a little victory.
Yeah, and you know what? It's great that you bring that up, because I think a lot of players in this league, great players, have talked about, Nick and the things that exactly what you said there, right? I mean, we've seen Joel Embiid talk about it multiple times about the way the Raptors have guarded Joel. And it's interesting because obviously, the Raptors did play Joel, and you guys played them in 2019, and now we're seeing them happen again. The NBA changes so fast. The teams are very, very different. But I think the central, number one item on that scouting report, it's still the same. It's we got to stop Joel Embiid. And when you think about this series versus the 2019 series, do you still see a lot of similarities, even though a lot of the roster has flipped over for both teams? Do you see a lot of similarities in the matchup?
Oh, yeah, definitely, without a doubt. I mean, of course, matchups are different. You don't have Mark on them. You don't have Serge on them. But at the same time, if you're doubling, it doesn't make too much a difference. It's fighting the catch out, and whether they're doubling when the ball's in the air, while they're doubling on the first dribble, they're doubling when he gets a foot in the paint, doubling on the spin, letting them play one-on-one on the face up, and also where they're doubling from, because that affects the rotations. If they're doubling from the man at the top of the key, then that affects the rotations. If they're doubling from the person who passed the ball in, or the cutter, that also affects the rotations. So, I mean, I see a lot of the similar game plans, and if you notice, from a lot of the double teams, a lot of the traps, a lot of the defense that the Raptors are playing in general, there's a lot of corner opportunities for Philly. But you're looking at those guys that are in those corner opportunities, and it's not Joel Embiid, it's not James Harden. He's mostly at the top of the key, so you're getting like Thibault on the corner, and those are the type of guys that you want to try to beat you. Hats off to them. They're definitely NBA players. They're definitely top players in the world. But as far as game plan goes, you're not having Joel Embiid, dropping 30 on your head. You're not having Tobias Harris shoot open threes. So, that's these are high level basketball players. So you gotta pick your battles, and you gotta choose where you want to try to let someone beat you from.
Yeah, and I was always curious too. Is there, as a player, is there also a frustration or a mental component to the idea that, okay, you're a great player. Let's say you're Joel Embiid, right? And you're getting trapped and doubled. You're not even allowed to essentially ever have the ball, ever play straight up or anything like that. Double's always coming at you. You're like, okay, at the start of the game, I'm going to trust my teammates. I'm going to get the pass out. You know what? We're going to swing the ball, get into the corner, and it's going to go to Danny, or it's going to go to whoever, as you mentioned, right? And maybe they hit the shot, maybe they don't. Over the course of the game, especially if you're starting to lose and you're the star player and you keep having to trust the game plan, is that also a component too? Like, you almost want to wear them out in terms of that frustration of, like, okay, if I'm always giving the ball up and these guys aren't delivering, do I start to try to take over and take more contested 1-on-2 type of shots, or try to force my way, or anything like that? Is that also something that's maybe not explicitly part of the game plan, but maybe almost inherently baked into the game plan? It's like, all right, you force them to trust their teammates until they break that trust a little bit.
For sure. I think it's almost dictated by the game plan as well. In the first comeback win by the Raptors, I believe they were doubling Embiid after the first couple dribbles. And I think later in the second, early in the third, you start to see Embiid go quick. He catches the ball and he's immediately either looking for a pass, which, he turned it over a couple times, or he's getting into a shot, he's getting to his fadeaway, or he's sealing a lot deeper. So, his mentality is like, okay, if I need to score, I need to do it quick. And so, you got him playing quicker, playing sped up, looking for different opportunities that he's not used to. So he's slightly out of his comfort zone. So, yeah, Embiid's going to try to counter those type of matchups. Coach Rivers is going to be able to try to counter those matchups. But at the same time, it's not their original game plan. It's maybe a different look for them. So, again, another little victory.
Yeah. No, I was just mostly asking because, like, you were on the team the year when Embiid famously had that 0-point game at Scotiabank Arena. And I know, like, a lot of credit went to Mark. And Mark deserves so much credit, I think, in terms of low post defenders. Like, I don't think you can do much better than a 7-foot guy. Like, honestly, that guy is huge and obviously how smart he is and everything like that. But I think the Raptors have done really well against Joel over the years, and is it a little surprising too that, like, now this year, right? So they built the team specifically without 7-footers, right? There's no Marc Gasol. There's not even like a Serge Ibaka on the team anymore. You're seeing like Precious Achiuwa, who's like shaped like a wing, really, and he's the primary defender, or it's like Kem Birch or something like that, and they're still having like not the same level of success, but they're still able to keep that matchup more manageable, especially the last two games, even without a center. Like, what do you make of that? Because that seems to be, at least on paper, it just doesn't seem to make sense. It's like, okay, if you have Marc Gasol, okay, I can see how you could stop Joel Embiid, but if you don't have Marc Gasol and you're still slowing down Joel Embiid, like, that has to be just really good game planning and also really good execution by the team.
For sure. I mean, if you look back throughout the games, even during the pandemic year, there were plenty of times we had plenty of injuries, and we had Rondé Hollis-Jefferson at that time who was playing the 5. So, we've gotten those type of rotations. We got that type of undersized 5-man guarding big men. At one point, I want to say OG had a great game of the year, and he was the 5-man playing against Jokic because we were so, like, bogged down with injuries. So, I mean, luckily, these Pascal, Fred, all these guys have had experience playing with the undersized 5s, playing, that type of NASCAR 5 type perimeter player type defense. So, that experience carries through.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think the other portion of this matchup is also just like they've done a really good job against James Harden, but it's real interesting because it almost feels like as the series has gone on, at least to our untrained eye, it seems like the Raptors are actually becoming less and less creative in how they guard James, in the sense that they're not swarming him. They're not doing what you guys used to do when he was with the Rockets, where you trap him at half court and get him to give up the ball. They're not sending a second defender on the pick and roll. A lot of the times they'll switch the pick and roll, let him attack one-on-one. If he drives and he gets to the rim, someone will come at the very last second, as you would with almost anybody driving to the rim. But they're really simplifying and essentially playing him one-on-one, which I think for a Nick Nurse-led defense, that's really strange, right? Like, you guys were always really known for, like, forcing the ball out of Star's hands, but it almost seems like they're more comfortable with James attacking one-on-one. Is that also what you're seeing defensively with him? And if so, like, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've been trying to notice on the game plan and, within the offense of the Sixers. But as far as I see, I mean, I could be wrong, but it looks like they're really trying to focus in on playing around Embiid. And times when Harden is in the game without Embiid, you do kind of see a different type of rotation. But I do see similar strategies as far as how they're guarding Harden, with, of course, not letting him shoot a step back as much as possible, letting him get in the lane, and trying to make him more of a facilitator. And if he does get deep in the lane, having the big man there to, alter his shot. That was, similar strategies that I've seen previously in Harden when he was with the Rockets and everything like that. But I really feel like it's a matter of, not letting Embiid hurt them and limiting, Harden's opportunities. Because, if he gets his step back, if he gets his floaters in the lane, if he gets his lobs to his 5-man, that makes a huge difference. But, I watched last couple games. Harden had a couple curls, a couple lobs to Embiid and everything. So I think Harden plays really well with a lob threat 5. And when that presence isn't there, he changes his game a little bit. And I think that actually works to our benefit, especially with switching on him and forcing him in the lane. He's a great one-on-one player, period. But again, he's driving into gaps where, the kind of Ole defense, sending him in a direction to a gap so we can know our rotations out of that. Because, again, it kind of seems like the Raptors' game plan is to get the ball out of the star player's hands and get those corner closeouts on guys like Danny Green, Thibault, and other players like that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I also want to ask you about like some of the guys that are still in the Raptors program who you sort of came up with. A guy like Chris Boucher, and seeing his growth and development, he's become like a pretty key piece for the Raptors all season off the bench. And in this series in particular, I think the first game was a little nerve wracking because look, everything went wrong for the Raptors in game one. They gave up like 130 points, and for Chris, like he ended up fouling out in 15 minutes. It was a very strange shift, but he's really come around. And what have you made of the growth of a guy like Chris Boucher, who obviously entered the Raptors, was often in those third, units that would come in only at the end of games, and to see him grow into the player that he is today?
Oh, I'm extremely happy for him. I mean, Chris is my guy. We played a lot. We were going through a bunch of the G League trips, a bunch of the G League travel, a bunch of the back and forth as being a two-way. And when I was injured that year between NBA games and G League games. So I'm extremely happy for him. I mean, he came out of the struggle of the G League and is showing his talent, and that's more props to Chris. I mean, he's always played with an unbelievable amount of energy. He's blessed with long limbs, able to step out, shoot the three, ability to block the shot, and just really the quickness that he has as a player. And then I just think throughout the years, repetitions has helped. He's seen these situations. He's seen the rotations. He's seen the defensive schemes. He's played against the players multiple times. So he's just growing confidence and experience. And, he's also adding different skill work and everything to his game. So, I mean, he's just becoming a more integral piece that, it's tough to play without Chris because he brings a different type of energy to the game.
Yeah, Malcolm, before we let you go, I think another thing that fans are really curious about and interested to hear about is like behind the scenes of being part of the scout team, like in the playoffs, where you guys have to play the role of the opposing players in practice and things like that. I'm wondering if you could give us kind of an example of what that was like for you, like during that 2019 championship run.
I'll take the Bucks game for example. Just mostly being able to give the team a solid look on, what they would be. I mean, of course, we're not, playing full speed 5-on-5, but just really being in the positions and being able to represent what those players are and what the schemes against them will be. I believe during that Bucks series, I was Chris Middleton, as the scout team, and just being able to be in their spots, replicate their shots, replicate the things that they do, and it also helps the whole team be able to call out the plays. Like when you have a good scout, good rotation, good understanding of what the other team is doing, when a play is set up, you already know where we're looking to go, where they're looking to go for their play, and how we're trying to stop it. So it makes communication in front of the bench easier on the defensive side. It makes communication on offense a lot better. So it's just really having everyone on one accord and making sure everyone's of the same mindset. And that's how you win games. That's how you win championships. That's how you win in general.
Yeah. So are you just like going home during that week and just like watching Chris Middleton tapes? Like, do they just give you a whole tape?
No, we usually several of the coaches usually get with us and key in on a lot of their tendencies and stuff like that. So we're never individually. I mean, they definitely give us extra film on our own, but we definitely watch it with the coaches and go over a little walkthrough before even practice starts.
Yeah. Do you remember who Jeremy Lin was on the scout teams during that run?
During that run, who was Jeremy? I'm trying to remember. He might have been Malcolm Brogdon at that point. I don't remember specifically, but I do remember Chris was Antetokounmpo though, for sure.
Oh man,
Yo, that's amazing. That's
just guys lining up to take charges on Chris, man. That's
right.
That's a tough drill to be taking part of.
Oh man. Before we let you go, we're gonna ask everybody this today. I know you've been watching this series. Do you think the Raptors can come back and actually win this series?
Of course I do. I mean, I have a supreme faith in all my guys. I love everybody in that organization. I still keep in touch with everybody. So I know the type of spirit, I know the type of attitude everybody has, and no one's in panic mode. Even when they went down 0-2, lost the first game, it's a matter of, all right, how do we get our act together and get these wins across. Because everyone, once you get that taste of winning, everyone wants it back again, and no matter the cost. And Pascal, Fred, all stars. OG really coming into his game, becoming an elite player in the NBA, and Gary Trent Jr. Really assimilating well into the culture that those guys have kind of initiated. So I got supreme confidence in my guys, and I want nothing more than for all of them to win.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Malcolm, listen, I really appreciate your time. Come back and preview the second round against Miami with us next week, all right?
Oh yeah, give us some good Kyle stories when we're at it too. Actually.
Oh yeah. As soon as we get to that round, I'm right there with you guys.
Awesome, man.
Appreciate you, Malcolm.
Malcolm, appreciate you.
NBA champion, Raptors champion,
Yeah,
Malcolm Miller.
one of my favorite guys.
Our one of our goals on this show is
To collect all the championship players.
we are
right?
going to talk to every single player involved in the Raptors championship.
I think
run.
we've done half the roster.
We have done. Okay, let's go through it. We got Norm,
Yep, Serge.
Malcolm. Obviously, we just did.
Yep,
We talked
Fred.
to Chris.
yep. Chris, Fred. We haven't talked to Pascal yet.
No,
OG.
we haven't talked to OG yet.
Yeah, Jeremy. Asian Heritage
I
Month
think
coming
Jeremy.
soon.
Yeah, listen, bro. That's where you got to get in there because I know.
I got you.
For Alex Wong, for people who haven't read Alex's work,
going on?
you have written about Jeremy's family in the New Yorker, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. As I wrote about his brother's basketball career.
Yes.
Yes.
Trying to take off in Taiwan.
Yes.
You wrote about his dad a little bit.
Yep.
You've put Jeremy in the New York Times. So I'm thinking
Yep.
you could probably get Jeremy for us.
Yeah. We can do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that we'll put the pressure on for Asian Heritage Month.
I'm
Which is every
I'm
month, by
putting
the
the
way.
pressure on you right now.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, Jody Meeks,
Jody Meeks we talked to, right?
Nick
we
Nurse we talked to.
We need
Actually,
to,
no, we haven't talked to
Yeah,
Nick
we
yet.
haven't talked to Nick. We
We were supposed to.
you know who we
yeah.
need
Yeah, what's up?
is Marc Gasol.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
gonna make that my personal challenge, okay?
I'm gonna ask. Oh man, we should have had Mark on. I guess we could still have him on for Friday if the Raptors win tonight. Because I would love to ask him about 3-0 comebacks as a Liverpool fan and him being a Barcelona supporter.
Oh, okay.
He
Please
would know. He will know.
Yeah, what about that Steven Gerrard slip though?
You don't even know what you said.
I know. That's why I want to know. It seems like it pained you a lot when I mentioned it
Let's
yesterday.
not mention it, man.
By the way,
Liverpool has won the league since. Okay,
we've got
it's fine.
Chris Herring from Sports Illustrated coming up. Joseph Cacharo from The Score in the second hour, and then Will and I will preview Game 6. Game 6, one more wish list for today, and yeah, that's it.
There you
Happy
go.
morning.
I'm your host, Wolu. That's Alex Wong. You're listening to The Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. All right. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I'm your host, Wolu. I continue to join my producer and co-host, Alex Wong, and we are joined also by author of Blood in the Garden, the flagrant history of the 1990s New York Knicks, and also Sports Illustrated senior writer Chris Herring, one of my absolute favorites covering the NBA. Chris, how you doing?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Chris, really appreciate you coming on. First of all, before we get into Raptors-Sixers, we were trying to get you on before the end of the regular season because Will was trying to do a lot of campaigning for Scotty Barnes for Rookie of the Year with the American media. And I saw that, like, as you and other media members were doing, like, podcasts or writing articles, revealing your votes, people were, like, tracking every media member's votes in, like, spreadsheets. And I got my hands on one of those spreadsheets and saw that you did vote for Scotty. So thanks for being on the right side of history, Chris.
I'm not going to respond to that part because I don't see it as any sort of duty to vote for him.
We do.
But yeah, I mean, that was a situation where, I do think that consciously, subconsciously, Evan Mobley just happening to miss the last few weeks of the season at a time where the Raptors were obviously making a late season push. And, it was an award really where I think Cade Cunningham would have been more in the running for the top spot had he been able to play at the beginning of the season, and he played well once he was able to play at the beginning of the season. And Evan Mobley, being out, but even before he was out, watching the Cavs slide a little bit while Jared Allen was not there, it just kind of gave Scotty Barnes a nice runway, having some of his main competition be out, and then the other competition being on a team that was one of the worst in the league for most of the year, even though Cade Cunningham kind of made them competitive and made them decent towards the end of the season. But I think the availability, I think playing for a team that was going to be at least in contention for the playoffs, and just the versatility that he had, and the fact that bad games for Scotty Barnes were still really, really impressive ones for a rookie, I think speaks volumes. And so it ended up swaying me towards the end. I had been someone that planned to vote for Evan Mobley heading into the last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. But like in all honesty, like when it comes to the award voting, how much of it is fun and how much of it is like stressful? Because I know a lot of these picks are really hard and they do get scrutinized, right?
I don't enjoy it. This is actually my first time voting. I've kind of put together mock ballots for several years. I kind of just had an opinion that I should not vote. I worked at the Wall Street Journal to start my career, which did not allow its writers to vote for things, which I fundamentally don't even disagree with that stance. I think it's a little bit different in the NBA, but when I first started covering sports at the professional level, I was covering the NFL, where you have Hall of Fame voting and you have media members like making an argument on behalf of a player, in a room with other reporters and other media people. It's awkward. Like it's very strange to me that on some level you've got people vouching for these people that are trying to make the Hall of Fame in a way where it's like you're trying to set your buddy up with this woman or something like that, and you're trying to tell her how great your friend is. Like it shouldn't be that way. And I think it's a little bit weird that on the one hand you're doing everything on the level as a reporter and in your reporting, but then on the other hand, like as soon as someone's career is over, you're sitting and making a case for them. So I do think it's weird from that standpoint. Basketball's not quite as bad, but what I don't love about basketball is the idea that the contract incentives and the contract ties that the CBA puts in it, that put voters in an awkward spot because I don't really think it's their fault. I also think that, for someone in my position who is watching a lot of basketball around the league anyway, as part of my job, that maybe I'm doing a disservice by not voting since I watch so much basketball and I'm making a point to kind of spread out my attention to watch all the teams at least a decent amount, as opposed to people that are voting who only cover one team or who don't cover the whole league, who by definition probably are in a situation where if they're traveling a lot to cover that team, how could they watch a whole lot of basketball? And the same is true, frankly, of coaches and people like that too, and players who have to play every other night basically during the season. I've said for a while now that I think there are certain people that have to watch the whole league that are part of the league. I think advanced scouts would be great people to vote for some of this stuff because they're watching teams all the time that and several teams at one time. But I don't love the idea of being saddled with the responsibility. I think it's challenging, and yeah, it's not fun to have people shouting at you and yelling at you and calling you out of your name because you vote for Embiid or you vote for Jokic in a year where both of them are worthy, and so is Giannis, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear because I think from talking to a lot of the voters on this show, like I feel like a lot of the voters do struggle with that, right? Because it is a responsibility in a way. But also, wanted you on because, you put out this great story on Sports Illustrated last week, a daily cover story that everybody should check out titled The Raptors Are a Beautifully Weird Experiment. I've heard you on other podcasts. I've heard you, I've seen you tweet about the Raptors throughout the season. Was curious, like what piqued your interest about this Raptors team to begin with, as you were watching them this season to do this story?
Well, I thought they were kind of intriguing even before the season started, for reasons that were in some ways outside of their control. Obviously, we have not had any instances where a team had to play their whole home slate I guess maybe we've seen situations where a team had to play on the road when they were playing at home, but never outside of their home country, which was strange. And so watching them have to do that and watching them trying to make do with last year with injuries and the pandemic and playing in Florida, it was just a rough time for them. And between that and Siakam needing surgery and struggling, prior to that, I think it would have been really easy to forget that this was a team that, granted, it lost Kawhi Leonard, but aside from that, still kind of, if it was a house, it would have been easy to think that it was a fixer-upper when it really wasn't something that needed that much work, and that had a little bit of an identity carved out already. And I think just lean into it more heavily once Kyle Lowry and Kawhi Leonard were not there anymore. And so it was a pretty easy team, I think, to kind of suggest that this was a team that was capable of bouncing back. I think it was a question of to what extent will they bounce back? Will they be a playoff team? Will they be, a team that is in the play-in trying to fight their way in? Will they just barely miss? But it was easy to suggest that there was going to be some improvement. And I think you saw some of that, them kind of flirting with 500 for the first 30, 35 games of the season, and then really turning it on over the last 35 or 40 games. And it was awesome to see Siakam take a step forward. It was awesome to see Van Vliet kind of continue what he's been doing to make the All-Star team. But I think more than anything, and what intrigues me most about this team is just that they're built. They know that they were going into this trying to kind of beat teams with a defense that wreaks havoc, with a defense that just has arms everywhere and limbs everywhere, that gets into passing lanes, that makes it difficult to pass around them and shoot over them to some extent, even without having a traditional rim protector, without having a center on their roster at all, a traditional center on their roster at all. It creates some challenges for them, but I think generally speaking, it creates more challenges for their opponents. And it's a really unusual way to build an entire roster. So that was what really intrigued me the most about this team.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think, this is like, we shouldn't pretend like the Raptors are the only team building to a strategy. It feels like there's several teams across the league now where I'm watching it. And, there are certain other defenses that have a lot of similar principles to what the Raptors are doing right now. But I think in particular, speaking to the challenges offensively to this group, because, I think maybe even coming into the season, you could predict, well, the Raptors are young, but they have all these athletes, and, Nick is a really good defensive coach. They could probably construct a good defense out of this. However, like for most of the season, their actual offense was actually ahead of their defense, which is real interesting. And people have covered, like, what they really got a lot of offensive rebounds. They really got out in transition. And if you nail these things, your overall offense can be good. But I'm also really intrigued by this thing that you mentioned too, about like Pascal and Scottie getting reps running the point because of the fact that Fred was out for significant portions of the second half of the season. And we're seeing him out once again now with the hip flexor and also with a bad knee. What did you make of Pascal and Scottie getting those reps running point, and how informative is that to, okay, even looking forward 1 or 2 years down the line, do you see those guys as like full-time like, do the Raptors essentially go so all in on this thing? They're like, okay, this year they've ditched centers. In the long run, can you see them ditching point guards because of the fact that they have two guys who are 6'9" who have lots of reps now running point?
Well, I think it probably makes you feel a little bit better about not having to allocate massive resources to that position as far as free agency is concerned, which is always a good thing. And just more to the point for this particular series, um, I don't think they knew that they would be playing without Fred VanVleet. If anything, I think they were kind of happy to have him back, and for him to be able to play a little bit before he had another injury right at the end of the year, and to be able to play a little bit and get a little bit of playing time before heading right into the series, and also to get some rest before the series. But not having him now, I don't think that they have much of a chance in this series. Granted, Fred was not playing particularly well because obviously he was hindered and banged up. So he wasn't great on defense in this series, and he was struggling a little bit with the shot. But that said, if you had gone into this series without the knowledge that that Pascal and Scotty were going to have all the reps they did during the season, but you said you're going to have a matchup against a team like the Sixers, a long team like the Sixers, and you're not going to have your all-star point guard for the series. And, oh, by the way, you're going to be down 3-0 when he gets hurt.
Mm.
Like, would anybody have wanted to take those odds? And I'm sure people probably would still prefer not to be in that spot, but you would much prefer to be in that spot with your forwards having gotten plenty of reps during the season. It doesn't mean they're perfect at it. It doesn't mean that it's completely ideal, but I think it helps for moments like that. And that was what I wrote about before the series started, without knowing that Fred would miss time, is that, and I think some stuff that I didn't even have that didn't make the story was the idea of you've had to practice outside of your comfort zone, but not practice, but just play outside of your comfort zone the whole season, just because of these injuries and because of what last year looked like and the year before that. And playing on the road and everything. Like, home games last year were road games for you, more or less, to some extent.
Yeah.
So all this is weird. It's a team that, in every definition of the word, has kind of been weird. And I obviously do not mean that in a derogatory sense, but just nothing's been normal for them. And I think that they've probably developed more comfort in being abnormal than just about any other team. You're absolutely right that other teams have sought to kind of go to having longer, taller lineups, positionless lineups. That's not necessarily a new concept on its own. I do think it's a little bit unusual how far into that they've delved, to the point where you wouldn't have anyone over 6'9" on your roster. But I think more than anything, I think they're just comfortable being uncomfortable to some extent, more so than most teams.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it too. And I think, for the Raptors, like, maybe this is not what you ideally plan for, but I think when you're seeing the results of it, like, especially now that you're here, right? The Raptors have talked so much about getting playoff experience this year, especially for younger guys. Like, we saw in Game 5, like, Pascal had the ball the majority of the time, and if it wasn't Pascal, it was Scotty. And those guys combined for like 11 assists, only 3 turnovers combined between the two of them. I guess I'm just curious in a more like basketball nerd kind of sense. Like, do you see what are the trade-offs, I guess, like, between like running your offense through a traditional like 6-foot guard who's able to handle really well and quicker and shiftier and probably shoots better, versus running your offense through a 6'9" guy who maybe is not able to penetrate and get into the smaller gaps that small guys are, but just inherently because of their size is able to still impact the paint, which I think, especially nowadays in the NBA, most of the offenses, you get into the paint, you force a rotation, you kick it out.
Yeah, I think it, in some ways, is doable in this series, just because it's not a team that has. This sounds crazy. It's not a team that has a dominant wing player that they're playing against. James Harden, in some cases, would be that guy, but obviously, in one of the last big stories I wrote was just how ineffective he's been for a while. I think as he's probably dealing with his own health stuff, as maybe he's kind of entering a decline from a career standpoint. Watching your 6'8", 6'9" guys have to handle for long stretches and have to guard guys that are elite at that position too. So I'm thinking about someone like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. It's not ideal to have to carry both weights at the same time. Now, Boston, I think it works because they've got so many guys who can defend. That, as great as Tatum was against Kevin Durant, he was able to kind of let go of that responsibility a little bit too.
Right.
And also, they moved the ball so well offensively to where, although Tatum is carrying a lot of the weight, the ball is being moved and he's not having to do every single thing by himself. So it's really a heavy burden for a situation like if you had, or Kevin Durant would maybe be a better example because he had to carry so much of the weight.
Yeah.
And also, you're going to ask him to try to defend some of the better players on the Celtics roster. You wouldn't want Pascal to have to do that. And I think maybe it's been a benefit to some extent that he hasn't had to do that necessarily because the Sixers don't have a super dominant, at least for right now, a super dominant wing player. Now, the challenge obviously is having to guard Embiid, which they're having to do as a group through doubles and sometimes straight up, but at least before he got hurt was often resulting in a foul. So the downside of it is that it really wears your guys down. And I think for a team like the Raptors that has dealt with plenty of injuries, you always have to be cognizant of trying not to wear someone down, even if it's not just a fatigue thing, just the idea of like the more stuff you're asking your star player to be involved in every single play, the likelihood of somebody getting hurt in a situation like that, you would think increases, and it just puts a lot of strain on them. So that's the obvious downside. The obvious upside is that if it's your best player, it's your best player. And it's the same reason that you see coaches plug their best player in, even if they've sat out the last 3 minutes of a quarter. Sometimes you'll see them plug that player back in for the last play of a quarter because the payoff of having extra involvement, even for just one play at a time, is really high. If that's your best player and if it's your best player by far. And so I do think that there's that trade-off and obviously that payoff for a team like this, particularly when your other all-star caliber player is out, that you're going to be leaning a lot on Pascal. So I would understand that too.
Yeah. And that's a great point too, because we've seen Nick do that quite a bit in this series. And that's just coaching. That's just good coaching. I mean, ideally it's like you have it all the time, but especially in the playoffs, like you definitely need to see it. Like you'll see Doc go into a zone for like one possession, and then Nick immediately calls to the bench, and Gary Trent Jr. just comes sprinting off, and he's like, "Oh, I'm ready to check into the game to break the zone." And it's like, yeah, that's what you kind of need to see. Now,
Yeah.
It's interesting that we're having this conversation about James Harden as well. Speaking about the Sixers, not having that dominant wing player, because you did write a piece about this, as you mentioned, and the piece is called "It's Time to Have a Conversation About James Harden." And you wrote in there, one, he hasn't really looked like that guy of late. And second, the phone booth that he uses to transform into that guy has generally been seen out of service during prior postseasons. So I'd love to touch on that because he really hasn't been that guy. I think like if the Sixers had, James Harden close to where he has been historically in the regular season, I think this series is probably over. Maybe not in 4 games overall, just based on the injuries and everything like that. I mean, but still, like this series probably would be already over. But he hasn't been that guy. So what are you seeing from James? Like, why isn't he that guy? And where in particular is he lacking?
Yeah, a point to be fair to him that I did not include in the story, which I really should have. Like a couple people who I imagine are Sixers fans and even some Rockets fans were like, man, he's, anybody can look at him and tell he's not right. I can't look at him and tell that because he had a rough season generally. And he'd been slowing down generally anyway for a lot of it. But also, who knows when he's playing hard versus when he's not, or if he's kind of sandbagging, if he's trying to get out of the situation. So it was not a particularly good season from him anyway, even when he was quote unquote healthy. So I don't know how close to 100% he's been or he is right now. But a lot of it, the stats I included in the story, he's always been someone who could either draw a foul or finish at the rim. And generally speaking, he's been someone that can get to his step back and make hay with that, or even draw 3-point fouls, which he used to do more than any other team, not even player, but just teams in the NBA. So when he's not able to do those things as well, he's gotten to the line enough, but he really has not finished well. He's shot 40% on his drives, which is down from the low 60s in the last couple of postseasons. He's shot a worse percentage at the I guess he's taken fewer shots there. He's hit a much lower percentage of his threes. And so it's just kind of a question of burst. He's still been a good distributor. But you don't want him to be just a distributor in a series where the Raptors, at least to start the series, were kind of leaving guys open to try to make sure that Embiid was covered, to make sure that Harden was covered. So passing to other guys is great, particularly when Tyrese Maxey damn near goes for 40 or Tobias Harris goes for damn near 30. But when those guys cool off and kind of fall back down to earth, you're going to rely on the star players that are making the most money on your team. I guess Tobias Harris is one of those guys. But anyway, so it's a little bit rough to look up and see that James Harden has a 17-point game on 10, 11 shots. Granted, that's good efficiency from a free throw standpoint, but you would love for him to be able to carry you at a time where Joel Embiid is not 100% because of his thumb. And again, as we talk about injury risks, from the standpoint of Joel Embiid, now everybody knowing what his injury is, the Raptors being a team that is going to be handsy and going to be long and reaching in and smacking down at the ball, he's at risk of being hurt even worse the more you have to give him the ball. So that's even more reason to kind of lean more heavily on Harden. But it's unclear whether he really has it to do that. It would be great. It would have been great for the Sixers to have been able to finish off the series earlier so that Embiid can take a few days. I don't know if it would really completely heal his thumb. It probably would not, but you would rather have days off instead of having to play against a team that is going to be reaching and slapping down and have their limbs and their arms everywhere. But I just don't know that Harden has it, or maybe it is just an injured hamstring or a tweaked hamstring that will not be 100% until he's able to take an offseason of rest. I don't know, but the fact that we have to ask which one is it is not really ideal, particularly as he's about to head into free agency and command what I would imagine is significant money as he's getting older.
Yeah. Chris, before we let you go, how realistic you think are the chances of the Raptors completing this historic comeback?
I mean, there's absolutely a chance for all the reasons that we've laid out, that I've laid out. I think all it would take is one breakout performance from Harden, for Embiid to get more comfortable, or maybe he's more used to the pressure he's going to see. Or for the challenge, if you're the Raptors, is or the Raptors just not shooting well on a given night. And the Sixers being able to do just a little bit more than them. That's the challenge here. Now, obviously, they're in a situation where they'll get an opportunity to play at home, to get a chance to try to even this thing up, which I think at that point it's a little bit. I mean, it's probably already a little bit scary for Sixers fans. I think most of us have seen Doc Rivers's response in that press conference. Which,
whoa, that's way too unfair to bring that up, Chris. You have to consider the
inside the
context.
NBA folks teed off on that, where they're like, man, you're already playing defense. You're already so defensive about it. And it's weird because I feel like, clearly it's on Doc's mind that he had that response kind of ready to go and that he was talking about it that intricately, in that detailed of a fashion. And I think Kenny Smith's point was right to say that you shouldn't even be going there to answer that question. When it's a 3-2 series. You could close the thing out and there is no game 7. So I see both sides of it. I would hear that noise too if I was Doc, but the Raptors are right there. And that's really all you could ask of a situation where they were down 3-0, where they lose an all-star point guard. And not to even mention Scotty Barnes and Thaddeus Young and Gary Trent earlier in the series, and everything that was happening with them. This is all you could really ask for, is to be in it, to put a scare into a team. Even if it's a team that has a coach that's been scared like this and kind of blown leads similar to this before. They've had the right mentality. They play hard. I did not expect them to do this once they went down 3-0, but it's been really cool to see. I don't have expectations that they'll win the series, but again, to put this sort of scare into a team that, at least roster-wise, has the look of a contender, it's pretty much all you could ask for. And I imagine that people in Toronto will be excited to see them come home and watch them have an opportunity to take this to a 7th game.
Yeah, no, definitely. Chris, I know it's a busy time of year, so really do appreciate you making the time to chat with us. And everybody check out Chris Herring's work at Sports Illustrated, and make sure you check out the New York Times bestseller, Blood in the Garden, The Flagrant History of the 1990s New York Knicks. Will, I want you to read that book too, because I know you know nothing about 90s basketball. Chris, appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
You guys are wonderful. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
All right. That's a good spot for Our second break of the show. I'm your host, Walu. That's Alex Wong. You're listening to The Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590, The Fan. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I'm your host, Walu. A reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360. I continue to be joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. We are working to get Joseph Cacharo from The Score, Cash, on the show. That's why we played the intro music for him. I know people listen to podcasts never actually hear the intro music. Alex, can you explain the intro music?
Yeah, we played the Shawn Michaels theme song just like we did last time because
Is
Joseph.
that not an actual song? Like, it's not just called the Shawn Michaels theme song, right?
I mean, it was created to be the theme song.
Oh,
So like it's like an original song for Shawn Michaels.
Oh, I always thought that was like an actual song that he just like
No,
claimed,
no, no,
like
no.
a walk-up song is not like, you know.
No, this is not like they pull Gangnam Style or something.
Why are you mentioning
Yeah,
that,
I
man?
don't know.
Come on, man.
But yeah, he
So many great Asian artists.
we love WWF wrestling. Cash and I, and he is the Heartbreak Kid of Toronto sports media. So that's what they call Shawn Michaels. Just to give you the reference.
No, I know. I
Yeah,
watched.
Okay. Oh, okay. We've got Joseph Cacharo, I believe, from The Score on the line with us now. Cash, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? Thanks for giving me the tip there of how to connect. Tried not using Chrome. That's what I did, and here we are.
There we go.
Anytime, man.
There we go.
Why are you so grumpy, man?
No, I'm good. I'm good, man. I'm good.
Just because you can't see yourself on TV, you're upset at us? What's going on, man? Yeah.
What's going on? Ready for Game 6. Game 6 ready.
Yeah, so, Joseph Cacharo is one half of my favorite NBA podcast, Pound the Rock. I never miss an episode.
No, it's true. I see you
and-
playing it out loud in the office. Like,
yes.
the
So-
way you are with Pound the Rock is the way Chris Boucher is with the Raptors Show.
Yeah, so as I was going to sleep at 4 a.m. last night, I was finishing off the episode, and I know...
Bro, we had to come to work for 9
Come on,
today.
man. How many hours of sleep did you get?
Don't worry, I'm locked in.
No, he takes 8 naps a day.
5-hour afternoon nap incoming. But Cash, at the end of the podcast, you said, I think you said your head is saying Sixers in 7, but your heart is saying Raptors in 7. So you going with your head or your heart? What's going on, man?
What I actually said was, my head is saying Sixers in 7, which was the prediction Wolfon and I both originally made on your show and on our podcast as well. And I said, but my heart is saying what Kawhi Leonard once said as a Raptor, and that was F that, let's get both.
That's right.
Look, if you recall, when we came on your show a couple weeks ago to preview this series, and I mean, it's not like I was saying anything new. We all kind of agreed on this, but I wrote about it at the time too, about how the Raptors were the worst possible matchup for the Sixers for a variety of in-game, like on the court, X's and O's reasons. And I think, obviously that didn't bear out when they were digging themselves a 3-0 hole, but things have happened in the last 3 games, even in game 3, which they lost, which have kind of reinforced all that for me. One of the points I also made in that original piece I wrote to preview the series, and that I mentioned at the very end of our show a couple weeks ago on your show, was that the Sixers are also uniquely built to quit, like this cast of characters specifically. Now, again, all of that seemed silly when they're up 3-0, but it only took a couple games to reinforce that as well. And so now, we find ourselves in a situation where it's 3-2. And look, obviously, the Sixers, as much as it feels like, the Raptors have all this momentum behind them and they've got it and all that, obviously the Sixers are still the favorite team here. They have an extra game to play with. The Raptors still have the margin for error that doesn't exist, where even if some random stuff happens, like, I don't know, George Niang gets hot, like, you know what I mean? Just like some random thing happens, like some guy gets hot from 3 and it just sinks you because you have no margin for error left. That's what happens when you dig a 3-0 hole. But if they can win tonight, which they should be able to do at home, and let's send this thing back to Philly. Can you imagine the toxicity?
Oh yeah,
in that
I'm
arena,
gonna
like
swim
Alex,
in it.
they're gonna
Alex,
boo
you were
to start.
talking about old 90s WWF wrestling. That arena, like the Raptors might as well walk in there cutting an old WrestleMania promo, because it's going to be a gong show. Like, it's going to be. You can't possibly imagine how toxic it will be without thinking you're making it up. And it will be true. Because, I joked about it on Twitter the night the Raptors won game 5. But it's like, if that thing goes back to Philly tied at 3 with just everything that franchise, that fan base has gone through over the last year or so, trade, like the Simmons thing, the Atlanta series, trading for Harden, thinking they were, good enough to win, all the like that crowd will be ready to turn if the Raptors are up like 5-4 in the first minute.
Nah, man, they booing them in the starting lineup intros, man. I honestly
So-
think it's gonna happen.
All of that is to say is like, yeah, they should still win if you're just looking at it on paper, but at some point, I think all this stuff's going to catch up to them, man. And Harden looks cooked. Embiid's hand, we know, obviously, like the guy's going to need surgery at some point. His hand is terrible. I mean, his thumb shouldn't be affecting his conditioning and footwork, but that's another thing. Maybe Drew Hanlon can work on him with that this summer.
Spicy meatball time.
Yeah, that's.
Damn.
I feel like I just gave like a series synopsis in 2 minutes. I don't even remember what the original question was.
Yeah, well, we have to do this for 10 hours. This guy just, finished our show in 2 minutes. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Wanted to get your thoughts. You saw the Doc Rivers rant when he was asked about the 3-1 leads. Just leave Pat Garrity and Gordon Garachek alone, man. What's wrong with you, Doc?
Because you probably have their jerseys.
Yeah,
knowing
exactly.
you and your jersey collection.
Think about these two guys. They're probably like 50-year-olds. They're retired.
Yep.
They're probably just chilling at home. And then someone probably texts them like, hey,
Their phone probably blew up.
Doc Rivers just called you guys trash.
Yeah, and T-Mac is probably
like, yo, leave me alone.
T-Mac probably charging $5 million to be on First Take today to like give his response.
T-Mac averaged 32 points per game that season?
Yeah. T-Mac was the one after they went up, I believe it was 3-1, said, it's nice to finally be in the second round. And then they blew the lead.
And then Glenn said otherwise.
Yeah, Glenn's like, no, hold on. Hold my beer, man. Hold my clipboard.
I bet you none of those guys thought they'd be catching strays from their
No,
coach 20,
man.
20 years later.
I was going to say, like, how isn't that one of the most, as a coach, you just don't blame your players. I'm sorry, but you just don't. Like,
Doc,
it's not something you do, man.
yes, I go back to Chris Herring mentioned this. Like
And
on
for
Inside
what
the NBA.
reason?
Yes.
What pressure were you under? Just to be like, hey, this is not relevant. We're going to try to close the game out in 6. And if we don't get it done tomorrow in Toronto, we're going to get it done in Game 7 in Philadelphia.
Yes, exactly.
Don't ask me about this. And if you want to talk about this after the series, after you've won, then talk about it. I still wouldn't fully respect it. But like, even if you do talk about it at some point, why are you calling out your players? Like, be like, come on, look at my roster. It's like, come on, look at your roster. Is that what any coach? Do you think Nick Nurse has ever said, come on, look at my roster?
You
No,
know,
he's probably said it to the front office, but yeah.
Nick Nurse is like, yo, I coached. I was coaching like janitors in Great Britain, and I was driving the bus. I didn't say, look at my roster.
I still think Nick was silently protesting to the front office when he played the starters 48 minutes for those 2 weeks, but that's another story.
And now Fred VanVleet's hip and knee are silently
Yeah, we're not here,
protesting him.
Cash. We're not here to talk about that. Come on, stay focused. What's your take on just Doc Rivers' response yesterday?
Oh, I thought it was a sign of a rattled man. I thought
The rattlesnake.
no, but seriously, because to both your points, first of all, when have you ever heard a coach talk like that? Seriously, like you even just that language, like go back and look at that roster. That's the kind of thing like we say on these shows. You know what I mean? When we're defending a player, we're talking about some old series, or maybe defending a coach. That's not something a still active NBA head coach says about a team he once coached, about guys he once went to battle with. It was strange, but more than that, yeah, to me, it was the ramblings of a rattled man. And I say that because like Doc Rivers, obviously, okay, he's not stupid. He knows that everyone's going to be talking about this because he has blown 3-1 series leads in the past. I get it. And I think he was asked about it. And like, that's how it all came up there because people had like, someone asked him about that history. Fair game. Obviously he can reply to it, but yeah, I think Will mentioned it too just now. Like you would expect the coach to either say, look, that's in the past. That has nothing to do with this series, which is true. It has no bearing on this series between these two teams. All I'm trying to do is win game 6 or win one in the next 2 games. Or even if you're going to reply to it, just be like, he kind of said at the end, but basically like things happen. I lost those series. Like we're in this one now. I'll talk about those when my career's over. I can't believe he went in on those previous series. Like it was going into details, like
he didn't mention Corey Brewer. He didn't mention
right?
Corey Brewer, Josh Smith.
Yeah, Josh Smith, right?
Right.
He didn't mention the Rockets coming back in that game with James Harden on the bench, by the way. He's throwing out these like specifics, like, well, Chris Paul didn't play in games 1 and 2 in this series. Like the fact that he is that defensive about it, instead of being as focused on the task at hand as he should be, to me, just like I said, it spoke to me like a guy who was rattled and was just so bothered by this context, like this narrative out there, which is based on facts, obviously based on things that really happened. But it was just so out of the norm for a head coach in the middle of a playoff series to go down that hole, down that rabbit hole. It just, I don't know, man. It seemed like a guy that is rattled by this noise. And that's very in line with not just Doc Rivers, but this specific Philly team. Again, like, look beyond Doc, even just Joel Embiid. The comments he made about James Harden the other night. Again, I know he was asked about it, but there is a way to answer that question when you are the franchise star, when you are the guy that everyone's looking to. There's a way to answer that question without being like, I've been telling him to be more aggressive, but it's not my job. That's the coach's job. Like, that sounds like something maybe you say after you get eliminated, not when you're still up 3-2 in a playoff series. So it's just like at every turn, these guys seem rattled. Embiid and Doc both have a history of throwing guys under the bus once things go wrong.
Come on. Don't sell James Harden short. Remember what, what happened with Chris Paul? He's like, I know what we got to do.
No. If you're gonna rank the three, I respect James Harden the most because, like I think you've said this, Cash. When the going gets tough, he just finds a new employer. And I respect that.
I say that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. But when the going gets tough, James Harden gets lost. That's what I say.
But you make such a good point, I think, both of you, about Embiid and Doc. And to me, it's just like, forget about this series. Forget about coming back from 3-0. There's just such a bad culture of like blame in Philadelphia. Yep. Like it's just a bad organizational culture. And to me, it's like,
well, I mean, what culture do they have?
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like they've built this thing from the process. They've gone through all these different iterations of the front office. They've shuffled the roster around Joel Embiid, honestly, in my opinion, like too many times. And like, what do they have? Like, what do they have?
Well, I mean, the point about culture is really interesting. Look, again, like the Sixers might win this game tonight, and this my whole thing, we probably wouldn't have the same conversation. But I think, like, realistically, when you're looking at their team long term, and it's like, okay, so they did the whole tanking thing. It was whatever, right? But it was quite bad. They had no culture then. Then they bring in Brian Colangelo. Then they bring in Elton Brand. Then it's like, now you got Sam Hinkie, or I'm not saying you had Sam Hinkie before. Now you have Daryl Morey, and it's like, just in terms of like the management level, you're changing it all the time. You're looking at the coaching, that also has been changed as well, right? Not as much, but still they've changed over and stuff like that. And you look at the star players, they kind of move and come and go. They've had multiple guys who you would consider, let's just say the market of star players, that they make max money, right? They've had tons of max players come and go. And this is just kind of their whole situation. It's just like, well, at the end of the day, who takes ownership for this thing?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm just, you compare it to the Raptors, and like the Raptors are Masai, it's Bobby at the top, right? They had Dwayne for a very long time. Nick was part of that, and now Nick is now in charge. Their main guys are their main guys throughout. They take responsibility when they don't play well. They take ownership, and sometimes when you really get into like the nitty gritty of like in the middle of a game, your expectations are on. You're feeling the pressure post game. People got to answer for each other. When you don't have that culture, your instinct is probably just like, hey, it's not my fault. Whereas it's like, it's our fault. We win and lose as a team. But you see them a lot of the time respond as if it's not my fault, someone else's fault. And that's not the sign to me as like a team. Like, yo, if Score FC loses, I'm not going to be like, yo, Cash probably could have scored 2 more chances.
Oh, no, I wasn't hearing that after I let in 7 goals.
It was your fault,
saying,
to be fair,
man.
bro.
No, man.
It was your fault.
I'm never playing again unless there's a full squad.
Are you guys talking about
that's fine with us.
the game that I and a bunch of the other Score FC players weren't there, and Alex let in? I think we lost, what, 7-0?
7-0. We discussed this yesterday on the show.
But Cash, what happened on the rematch?
In the rematch, with a regular keeper back in net and more of our regular squad, I believe we won something like 12-1.
Yeah, so I contributed to beating them on aggregate.
Nah, you're plus. You got your plus minus is
Alex. You're on off net.
Yo, I'm B-ball Paul. I'm
Alex's on off
football Paul
net was minus 18 in like 100 minutes of playing net.
All right, man. We started this slandering the Sixers culture and their entire organization. How did it land on me? But I think Will makes a really good point, because I think about players. I look at Nikola Jokic. Think about all the injuries that team has had to deal with the last 2 years. Think about the matchup that he just had to go up against the Golden State Warriors. And I don't see him blaming any of his teammates for not stepping up. And listen, I get it. Like when Embiid called out Ben Simmons, when he's called out James Harden recently, it's because both of those players have not lived up to expectations at that point. But at some point, for me, it's just like, I don't care. Like, if you're going to go around the league campaigning for MVP votes and you're going to get mad at like the media members for like choosing Jokic over you and all this stuff, if you're really that good, then just win a first round series. Win a first round series without having to tear down your team, without having to like shift the blame to your coach and all of that stuff. Think about LeBron too. Like, I'm not putting Embiid on LeBron's level. All those years when LeBron had to drag all those teams. Like, listen, I'm sure it wasn't a great environment to be around on some of those LeBron teams, especially when he was trying to trade half the team at the trade deadline every season.
Trade deadline, you mean November?
Yeah, exactly. Like when he hit a game winner against Minnesota the day before the trade deadline, Isaiah Thomas is trying to like dap him up. He's like, no, you're on your way out. But like, I just go around the league and think about players at that superstar level that just like constantly talk this way and have this like culture of blame. It's really unique to the Philadelphia 76ers to me, in my opinion.
And I think that Joel Embiid has to take some blame for that. A lot of the blame for that. Like, look, he is a great player. What he did in game 3 after hurting his thumb was like, look, you know, as Raptors fans, for sure, it sucks to have watched it. But at the same time, like years from now, that is going to be one of those games, one of those performances, one of those shots where you will actually feel lucky that you were in the building and got to witness that. Like, that's how good Embiid is at his best. But like Alex was saying, whether it was the comments he made about Simmons last year and Harden this year, where it's like, yeah, he's being honest about a teammate. He's not, you know, making things up to throw someone under the bus. But at the same time, like I was saying, like, you are the franchise guy. The Simmons thing, at least it was after the series had ended, which Simmons played a big part in. This is, like I said, still in the middle of a series that you're winning. And you need to find a way to answer that question without throwing James Harden under the bus, okay? Or even Doc. He kind of threw Doc under the bus too, because he also said it's not my job, it's the coach's job or something along those lines when it comes to telling James Harden to be more aggressive. You know, Joel Embiid, the guy who will, on one hand, tell the opposing head coach he needs to stop being about the calls. I don't know. Can I say that on the radio? I'm not even sure. I'm used to podcasts. About the calls. And then 2 days later, you know, getting fined because he's the one complaining about calls. Like the lack of self-awareness there, everything, man. Even like I was saying, yeah, okay, he hurt his thumb, but that shouldn't affect his conditioning. Will, this is something I know you've pointed out before too. Joel Embiid, like every playoffs, is just gassed.
Yeah.
Now, we can speak to the fact that, yeah, the Sixers probably, the way they've constructed their teams, have placed way too much of a two-way burden on him.
Sure.
But at the same time, again, hey, you want to tweet about how, you know, if I don't win MVP this or whatever, I think he tweeted it, or maybe he just said it in a press conference when he said, like, if I don't win MVP this year, like, I don't know what I have to do. It's like, well, if you're going to talk like that, if you're going to, you know, this is a guy that has gone after opposing bigs, has called them soft. Like the list goes on and on with Joel Embiid. He's always talking and or complaining and or grifting for fouls and whatever the case may be. And yes, you're a great player. And yes, you're tough to guard without fouling. And yes, you had a great season. You probably should finish second or third in MVP voting. But when all the chips are on the table, you usually come up short. You usually don't play your best. And then you seem to be looking everywhere but inwards for why that was the case. And at some point, when you're the franchise guy, unfortunately, fair or unfair, the buck stops with you. And Joel Embiid, in year, whatever this is of his career, still doesn't seem to understand that.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, Sixers fans, I don't think really want to admit that, because they've kind of let him off the hook too. Even when I mentioned it last time I was on your show, but like in elimination games, Joel Embiid's effective field goal percentage is something like 42%. And his
As a center? Damn.
Dude, 35 turnovers to 15 assists in elimination games. And the common refrain from Sixers fans is always like, you know, well, they didn't have a true offensive initiator and they could barely throw him a post-entry pass. All things I agree with, and they should have helped him in that regard. But that's not an excuse for 20 more turnovers than assists. Maybe it's an excuse to be like 1-1 or have us few more turnovers than assists. 35-15 in elimination games. Some of that is you too, bud. You know, like it can't all be on your team. Yeah. And the last thing I want to point out too, sorry, hogging the mic here, but the last thing I want to point out is also like, and obviously I get he's not going to come out and say Harden's cooked, but even just the, you know, the theory of, well, I tell him to be more aggressive, like we need him to be himself. I guess Joel Embiid hasn't seen it yet, but I think we can confidently say it. I think both teams can confidently say it if you ask them, you know, like off the record. But James Harden physically cannot be himself anymore. That's what it's looked like this season. This is not a 1 week sample, a 1 series sample. a sample just in Philly. The majority of this season, with the hamstring issues that have lingered since last year, that were re-aggravated this year, and maybe just with him getting up there in age and all the miles on his body, whatever the case may be, whether it's injury or indifference or some combination of all that, or age, whatever, he is not physically the same player. He does not have the burst to get by guys. And it's especially bad against this Raptors team that is as lengthy and switchable as they are, and can just negate him in the pick and rolls and when he wants switches and all that. So if he's not getting by guys and can't get into the paint, and he's shooting, I think he's shooting like 37% from 2-point range in this series, his offense is completely reliant on step back threes and getting to the line. But even getting to the line is going to be tougher because he's not getting into the paint. His first step isn't working by anyone. So,
but his off arm grabbing your off arm is working.
Yeah, that is. But, it's fewer and further between when he's not getting into the middle of the floor. Even his playmaking, which has been good in this series, is less threatening when he's not getting into the middle of the floor, which he just physically can't do anymore. So as much as Joel Embiid and whoever else is going to say, they need Harden to be himself, they need him to be more aggressive, I don't think it's a matter of Harden needs to be more aggressive. I think it's that they need a version of Harden that I don't think exists anymore, at least not more than maybe in a 1 or 2 game in a row stretch.
Well, I mean, listen, the funny thing with the Sixers is they're committed to this team. Like, it's not like they can just, at the end of the season, be like, all right, we're going to move off from James Harden.
But are you sure, though?
Yes. Daryl Morey's whole career is the James Harden trade and the James Harden trade part 2. He's committed to this man. And, we can see if the Sixers, let's say the Sixers don't win the series, either today or on Saturday or whatever, right? And they advance in the second round. They're not getting past the second round.
No, that's a 5-game series.
They're toast, right? Yeah. They're ready to throw in the towel. Mm-hmm. Doc's gonna be the easy scapegoat. He's gonna get let go.
Yeah,
he's probably gonna torch 4 or 5 guys on the way out,
and then join the Lakers.
Which will be very fun to watch. Then what's gonna happen? They're gonna hire Mike D'Antoni, man, and they're gonna be like, well, the way to get the best out of James is to bring in his coach. And then that's going to be interesting because Mike D'Antoni's never had a low post guy to play through. And it'll be also very interesting when James Harden becomes the first NBA player to get paid $200 million in only dollar bills. It also,
once again, I respect James Harden a lot.
To the point, to the point of Joel and sort of how you act in these situations. It's like, you know what? When I watched the Nuggets play the Warriors, and obviously that series ended in 5 games. Denver just got outmatched. When I watch those games, I'm like, damn, look at Jokic. He's giving every ounce of energy that he has out there. He's having to carry this team. You compare the rosters, it's not even funny how undermanned this Nuggets team is. You know what he did last night in an elimination game? 30 points, 19 rebounds, 8 assists, shooting 12 of 18, getting guarded by Draymond Green.
Getting guarded by arguably the best defensive player in the game.
Yeah, and you see him getting back on defense, deflecting passes, and playing as much.
And you know what happened after he loses? He shakes everyone's hands. And then he gives props to his team.
Yeah, he had a great quote about Draymond. He was talking about, he's such a great defender. It was really fun to go against him and has so much respect for him. And I was like, you know what? Honestly, that's what I want to hear. That's the kind of effort I want to see. I can ultimately accept losing. As anybody who goes to the playoffs, you're going to lose way more than you win. Mm-hmm. Period, right? You're at most 29 teams or 30 teams compete every year for the championship. 1 wins. So the majority of the team of the league is losers, but there's a way to sort of go about it, man. You didn't think Jokic went to the podium and was like, well, I mean, come on, I was playing with Aaron Gordon out there.
Like Monte Morris, he's got to be more aggressive.
So anyway, I think just great players take it upon themselves, and that's part of being great.
But instead, you get a player who's up 3-0 in the series, loses the first game in the first round, and slow claps the refs.
And he says there's a conspiracy going on.
And then insinuates that they had one job to do, which was to bring the series back to Philly.
You had one job to do, which was to end the series.
I'm cool with all of that, but then what was your response in Game 5? Your response in Game 5 was getting cooked for 7 straight possessions in the third quarter. And, there was just no energy. Everybody's looking to you because nobody's looking to James Harden. As good as Tobias Harris is playing, nobody's looking to Tobias Harris. Nobody's looking to Tyrese Maxey. And listen, I've said this too. I've not seen this Sixers team over these past 4 or 5 playoff runs win a game like they have to win tonight. And if they win that game tonight, honestly, like I've said 10 times on the show this week, I'll tip my cap to them. Yeah. It'll be a really impressive performance if they win tonight. And then that's it. That's it. I'll tip my cap.
Alex is gonna be the Jeter's nephew gif, like just tipping his
man.
Yankee cap in the
No,
medium
but-
row at the
Cash.
ACC.
You don't even understand. Alex is either gonna have to tip his cap in this series or dip his cap in this series.
Oh, yeah,
He's
yes.
promised he's gonna eat his hat
Yes.
if the Raptors end up coming back down 3-0.
Oh man,
So,
I gotta dip part of a brim of a hat in I don't know what
man.
condiments. But listen, like I will be so impressed by the Sixers
make it into a hot dog.
if they win tonight. Like legit, I'm not even being like facetious or anything. Like I think it'll be really impressive if they go into that environment tonight, given all the pressure, given all the talk, given the injury to Embiid, how Harden has been playing. If they win that game tonight, and if they do, honestly, like hats off to them. Legit, I just haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it from this team.
Yeah, they're in big time like show me territory now.
Yeah, and again, I keep
Prove it.
saying it's the first round. How is a
Yeah.
team talking like
Bro,
this in the 1st
they're-
round? They already
look, man,
lost
they're
in the
not-
big picture.
That's the thing too. Like this is a team that came in with obvious like title hopes. Maybe not full out like win like title or bust because they hope to have Harden long term, but still, I think regardless of what happens in this series, what this series has done and what the Raptors have done is expose this team. And honestly, their Sixers have helped do it to themselves too, but they've been exposed as fraud. Like contender style, they're frauds. They're pretenders. You're not winning a title with this version of Harden. Tyrese Maxey's a great player, but even the way the Raptors have changed the way they're guarding him has exposed his limited playmaking at this stage of his career. Tobias Harris has surprised the hell out of me. I mean,
Yeah,
I
he's
was
been great.
joking the last time I was on that he was allergic to big moments. He did in fact take his postseason EpiPen that I was hoping he didn't, and he's fine now apparently. Although I still want to see him in a big moment because he did miss a point blank layup
That's
could have
true.
put the
Yeah.
at the end of regulation get 3. But there's like all these reasons, and then now Embiid's got the torn thumb. Like this team's not competing for a title, so. This, what they went from a team that had all this positive energy and like, oh, they got Harden, they're going to compete for a title. It's the happiest and best Embiid's ever been, to very quickly now starting to look like a Utah style team where it's like, all right, well, whatever happens here anyway, that like they're not actually competing for a title. Like not so much Utah in the sense where they're going to be broken up this summer, but Utah in the sense where it's like, even if Utah had actually beaten Dallas, no one would have come out of that being like, well, now they can maybe make a run at a title. It would have been mostly like delaying the inevitable.
Mhm.
And I think it's kind of crazy that this Sixers team has become that as quickly as they did.
Yeah, no, it's remarkable. I want to ask the two of you. I'll start with you, Will. Like, who has the most to lose on the Sixers if they actually blow this 3-0 lead?
Who has the most?
Like, who will
to
come out
lose?
of it looking the worst? So obviously the candidates
Well, I
are
mean-
Doc, Embiid, Harden, Daryl Morey as well. I throw in there.
Yeah, I would say for this year, it's got to be James. It's just like it's really tough to see. Like, so like for a great player, and James Harden was objectively a great player for a very, very long time. For a great player to come out looking like this is just he's legitimately going out sad, man.
Yeah, someone say he destroyed 2 teams in 1 year, in 1 season.
That's efficiency.
Yeah,
That is
He
efficiency.
said, "And one."
He really said it. Cash, what do you think? Like, if they actually
be James.
blow this 3-0, like, who do you think is going to not take the most blame, but who's going to come? Whose legacy will it hurt the most, you think, out of all these guys we've talked about?
I want to say Embiid. I'm kind of leaning Doc too. And here's why. With Harden, I think there have been moments in his past that have hurt his legacy. I think this one, at least, in a few years, we'll look back on it and say, well, he was past his prime. Like, this was the beginning of him being cooked. There was not much more he could have done in that series just at that point in his career. Embiid is in his prime, again, in a season where he and a bunch of other people think it's like egregious that he's not the MVP or he might not win MVP. For him to blow it this year after the things that have happened in his career and his playoff history, I think will be damaging. That's the kind of, but at least with him, he's still young enough where you can be like, well, he could get it back one day. Doc is, older. He's a coach. He's already blown 3-1 series leads.
Mhm.
And even though I don't actually think this specific series meltdown has much to do with the
Exactly.
Sixers coaching, and I don't think it should be on Doc this time,
Mhm.
I also think history's not going to remember that. The talking heads aren't going to always remember that.
Oh, don't worry. Doc will be there to remind them, though.
Well,
He's
but,
gonna be
but
like,
you know
"Look,
what
I
I mean,
had to
man.
play
Like,
Georges
dude,
Niang."
to be the only head coach in history to blow a 3-0 series lead when you're already the first head coach in history to blow multiple 3-1 series leads, to be as defensive as he's been, to be, to have thrown guys under the bus the way he did. Like, that 2008 Celtics team is going to save him in a way, but
Is it really,
he's
though?
he's got the least amount of runway left career-wise to undo this, other than Harden, who, again, you can at least point to and say, well, as a player, he was cooked. But Embiid,
Embiid's gonna get away with it again. He can't keep getting away with this.
No,
he can't keep getting away with this.
No, he's not gonna get away with this. I'm sorry, but if Jokic can give me 30, 19, and 8 while getting guarded by Draymond Green, then I need Joel Embiid to get me at least that while getting guarded by Precious Achiuwa. I think that's just only fair.
Will sounds like Shaq right now. Will sounds like Shaq right now. You know when Shaq on TNT, I need Ernie, I need minimum 37, 18, 7, 4, and 1 from him in an elimination game.
Listen,
no, but
I'm an Asian dad. I expect
he can't keep. And this is a complete separate conversation. But man, skill level wise, Jokic is on another level versus Embiid.
Yeah, man.
Jokic,
even conditioning wise, man, he can go for longer periods. Anyway,
this is separate.
Can I ask you guys? Do you guys remember the first time you had me on to do a spicy meatball of the week this year? Do you guys remember what my spicy take was?
That Jokic was going to win MVP, right?
Yeah, and I actually got a lot of blowback for that, and I did a video about it on the Scores YouTube page as well because at the time the Warriors were hot and everyone was like, "Steph's winning MVP again."
SN bets, yeah, but go on, go on, Cash. Yeah.
and
don't mention yours.
Oh man, is this line getting choppy again? I don't know. Am I cutting out here?
Yeah, we're running long, by the way. You cool with a run? Is Score PR cool if we keep you for another 5 minutes?
That's fine. But yeah, I mean, I thought he was the best player in the league last year, which he was. In regular season, he won MVP. I thought, based on what he looked like those first 2 weeks, despite everyone drooling over Steph, that he should have been the early season MVP again, and by the end of the year, it bared out. But look, I think Embiid, if anything, should be like third in voting. I would put Giannis above him this year too, which again, Sixers fans would just find that egregious, but I don't know, man. Giannis looked pretty good in dispatching of
come on, man. Come on, that Bulls team.
No, but Giannis is a
my
monster.
God.
Off topic again, but I know Chris Middleton, they said today he's out for the whole series against Celtics. I got the Bucks in 7, man.
Unfortunately, I have to pick the Celtics in that one.
Yeah,
I might even pick Celtics in 5.
I think beating Giannis in a 7-game series is the new beating LeBron in the East, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know, man. I see this guy just like putting away Oreo cookies and telling dad jokes. He's not going out in the second round.
All right. Last thing I will say about the Sixers-centric episode is just like, I actually don't think it's Doc's fault.
It's not. Yeah.
He has 4 guys that he can play.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes.
After Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese, and Tobias, who are you really going to play consistently that's going to be like, all right, that guy's going to deliver for me. You can trust him to play 20 minutes. He's going to play both ends of the floor. Yeah. You can't name another guy like Danny Green half the time, and you know what happens if you trust Danny that much.
No, I'm completely with you. I think the Doc narrative, narrative is good content, but when it comes down to it and you're like, what adjustments is Doc going to make? Doc needs to make adjustments. You got to look at the roster. Like, what can you really do, right?
So it's Daryl Morey's fault. Daryl Morey's a fraud, bro.
Wow,
he's a fraud.
Do you remember when the Raptors beat the Rockets early in that season when the Rockets ended up with the best record and Harden won MVP and Morey tweeted something
regression?
About like
he tweeted a link about regression.
And then the Raptors won a title within a couple years, and Daryl Morey is just thirsting for James Harden.
I don't know if Masai ever came out publicly, but I know Masai was not happy about that.
No, Daryl Morey's legacy is like, one of two things. Number one, his philosophy, hey, if we get as many stars together, we're going to win games in the basketball. And I'm like,
keep it basketball.
Wow.
Yeah. Keep it basketball with Daryl.
That's truly a revolutionary thought. That you get stars together, that you'll win basketball games.
Keep it basketball. Yeah.
And then the other part that he's really known for, and I'm not going to say the other part because there should be 3.
Thank you.
Because Alex wants you to keep it basketball.
No, nothing makes him more nervous on this show, and that's fair. Yeah. But the other thing he's most known for is signing people to the poison pill contracts or like the Chandler Parsons 4-year minimum contracts, all that kind of stuff. It's like, really, that's what you're known for? Labor malpractice? Okay, good for you, man. Listen, man, I'm sick of this man. Look at this roster that he's put together for them.
Yeah. That's the thing also with Doc too. Like, look, Doc. I mean, as much as we clown him for it now, he had a point about that Magic team, and this year I don't think it's on him. I actually thought those first 2 to 3 games, not just because they won them, but if you watch what was happening in the games, I actually thought he coached really
even
good
game 3, getting the timeout to set up that play.
And his out of timeouts historically have been really good. The game plan going into the first couple games was good. So to me, this is not on Doc, and the Magic one probably wasn't either, as he was very happy.
Why are we
as
even
he was
here?
very happy to remind us.
Why are we here talking about the 03 Orlando Magic?
for
That's
real.
what
I
I'm
agree.
saying.
I
No,
agree.
this sounds
See,
like
Doc
this.
has won. Doc has won. He got us to do what he wanted to do. But no, the
Can't
two
keep
Clippers
getting
ones-
away with this.
The two Clippers ones were definitely. The two Clippers ones were definitely, he was a big part of the.
Well,
plan
he
as
was ranking them. He was like, "Yeah, that one I'll own." He's like,
This guy, but Doc Rivers was doing a 5 times Doc Rivers blew it the biggest listicle in real time.
but Doug
This guy
Rivers
was
got
2012 Bleacher Report on himself.
Oh man, he got himself a byline. Listen, Cash, always appreciate you. Everybody check out Joseph Casharo's work at The Score. Download the Pound the Rock podcast.
Watch
check
the
out
YouTube videos.
Check out The Score's YouTube. And, I want Scotiabank Arena tonight to be like an old school 90s Monday Night Raw crowd, man. It got to
I'll
be
make
like
sure of it.
got to be like when Mankind won the championship on
I'm
tape
coming in
delay.
on a zip line.
Oh my God, yeah, I'm gonna see you in the gondola.
We'll be in the 600s.
with tearaway pants. I'm coming in on a zip line with tearaway pants and ripping them when I get to the 600.
Oh man, shouts to the spicy meatball, the heartbreak kid of Toronto sports media, Joseph Casharo. Appreciate you, Cash. We'll see you tonight.
I appreciate you guys always. Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, cheers, bro. All right. Time for our last break in today's show. I'm your host, Walu. That's Alex Wong. You're listening to The Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. I'm your host, Walu. I continue to be joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. We only have like 10 minutes left for the final segment.
10 minutes left.
Alex is excited. Me
Anything's
and him
possible.
fist bumping during the break. Hey, before we go anywhere else, I was going to say shout out to Roger Hui.
Okay.
Your daughter, Celine, was mentioning how we are this retired Asian father's favorite show.
Yep.
You know,
That's
so
awesome.
further cementing what we had already known. Only Asians support Asians. And
Okay, I don't know if I can ride with that, but yeah, sure.
is that not true though?
Yeah.
It's true. Come on, let's be real.
Yeah, yeah.
We can be honest. Yeah, man. Salute to Roger watching us. At least someone's dad is watching this show.
Oh, yeah.
No,
That's
my
personal.
dad exclusively listens to Fan Morning Show between 6 and 6:30.
Yeah.
He's like, it's time to wake and rake.
My dad's like, you talk about Chinatown a lot on the show. You sure that's cool?
My dad's like, oh my God, you know Blake? And I'm like, yes, Dad. I'm also on the station, you know. He's like, yeah.
Oh,
He's
no,
like, he's like, I read your 10 things sometimes, you know. But
Shout out to
your
Roger.
voice, I don't know. I prefer to hear you speak Chinese to me. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, Dad.
Shout out to the YouTube stream. We've got Daniel, Dale, and Alvin Williams joining us tomorrow.
Wow.
So
What a combination.
hopefully we'll be talking about Game 7. And if not, we shall recap a beautiful development season
Exactly.
for the Toronto. This is the most chill going into a Game 6. Like, think about all the Game 6s
Oh my
in
God.
Raptors history. Think about the Warriors. Think about the Bucks. Even think about the Sixers.
You know what?
last
I
time.
was pretty chill heading into Game 6 of the NBA Finals, believe it or not.
Yeah, but like, I know you love to remember it that way in retrospect.
I'm serious. You know
No,
how I spent the day of Game 6 before the game itself? I went to have dim sum with my family.
Oh, yes, you have a
in-
lot of
in-
family in the Bay Area.
San Francisco, and
Mhm.
you know, literally was there visiting my cousin who was 15 at the time, and we went for boba, and you know,
Yeah.
just having a good time.
I love
you know,
that.
visiting downtown, obviously a historic Chinatown there in San Francisco, and it was just like
Oh, yeah.
I was just
That's
chilling.
an uphill climb there. There's a lot of hills there, man.
Literally an up. Yeah, great job with the topography report. Only 10 minutes. Somehow still a challenge to burn the last 10. but-
Ah, man. By the way,
Um,
shouts to Lance Kennedy filling in today as our producer for Derek Brandeo, who,
Yes.
like I mentioned, is doing a double major in astronomy and astrology.
Yeah, it's
So-
a graduation for him today.
Yep,
and he's also turning 20.
He's Vince Carter. He said, am I going to produce the pre-Game 6 show or am I going to go to my graduation? And the 28-year-old picked correctly. Lance filled in for us last week, too, when we did our 10 a.m. show. He wasn't very thrilled with some of the
Oh.
jokes that we were making.
By the way, that 10 a.m. show was dark. That was the day after
Yeah.
Game 3. the
Delete it
morning
from the
after.
podcast feed.
And I was just here being like, guys, you know, there's more to life than basketball.
Yeah, I was like, the series is effectively over.
And-
plus, I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's Oren Weisfeld. He was like, "Hey guys." Oh man.
From now on, known as Eorin Whitesfeld.
Yeah. By the way, quick Game 6 preview. Danny Green was asked about Game 6 tonight after practice yesterday, and here's what he said about the Sixers.
So we have the pieces. We've done it 3 times already. We have 2 games to get one, but we're taking it 1 game at a time. We want to get this one. And we had four opportunities to get one. But so now it's Thursday coming soon in Toronto in their building, and you know you got no choice now. Either going to nut up or fold.
That's what you told me every time we play heads up poker, right?
No, I'm telling you to nut up or fold, man.
Yeah, this is actually what Will tells me every day, an hour into our 2-hour shows.
Yeah.
It's like, are you going to nut up or are you going to fold? And I usually fold.
Nah, salute to Danny Green. He's the only guy I respect on that team.
Yeah.
Raptors champion Danny Green.
Yeah, Harrison
Forever.
Sanford, I know you're at the Apple Store at Eden Center, and they're playing the Raptors show right now. Look forward to seeing you tonight.
No, yeah, look, I think for them, they're taking it one loss at a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
New cliches.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's honestly low pressure. Obviously, we want the Raptors to win tonight, let's be clear.
Yes.
But it's gonna be fun. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. Just watching legit, like, how the Raptors come out
Mhm.
in a big game like this, but also how the Sixers respond. Like, just how the Sixers respond, because you guys did not show up at home in Game 5, and now you've had 2 days to talk about it.
I wouldn't mind a repeat.
Of course. I want a 3-peat. I want it tonight. That's the repeat, and then the 3-peat on Saturday. I just want to see this Game 7, man.
Yeah, no, listen, for the service of all basketball fans, I'm not even speaking for Raptor fans. The Raptors, please go ahead and beat the Sixers team tonight to force Game 7. I think everyone in basketball wants to see that.
Yeah.
Everyone.
By the
Everyone
way,
wants to see how.
I know people have been asking because people got to work on Saturdays and things like that. Based on the latest scheduling updates that the NBA has sent us, I believe depending on how many Game 7s are going to be, the game's going to be at either 7 or 8:30, I want to say.
8:30.
But it's going to be in the evening. I know there are people that were working in the afternoon wondering if it's going to be like a 1 p.m. game. So if necessary, Game 7 will be.
Listen, Raptors-Sixers historically has always gone to Game 7. So let's just get to the Game 7. All right, but first the Raptors got to take care of business tonight. And once again, I'm only asking for a very fair whistle so that both teams can play defense. You know, one of the things I've really enjoyed the last like 4 or 5 games of the series is just, or not 4, the last
entire series.
The last 3 games of the series, I would say, is that nobody has been in foul trouble. And
Correct.
of course, that's on the players to like do better in terms of like not foul. It's obviously like the Raptors, like we mentioned, we weren't complaining about the foul calls because of the fact that the Raptors are just playing bad defense and they're getting beat.
Yep.
But the last 3 games of this series, nobody's been in foul trouble. No one's like, oh, Fred's got to pick up 2 fouls in the first minute, or like, oh, Chris Boucher has 3 fouls in 4 minutes. It's like guys can just play and the players can decide the game. And of course, if they're fouls, call them. If they're you know, James Harden's driving and all of a sudden you see his arm tangled with another guy's arm, maybe just like not fall for it one time. But in any case, like just call the game normally. I think that's all we asked for because the games themselves have been truly, truly fun to watch. And quite frankly, with the Raptors like limiting their foul attempts, right? We saw what James had 6 free throws. We had Embiid 6 free throws. You know, the Raptors have led like for the large majority of the last 3 games. Like Matt Devlin shared the stat yesterday on the show when he came on. The Raptors have led for all but the Sixers have only led for 10 minutes total in the last 3 games. We're talking about, including that overtime period, 150 minutes. 10 out of those 150, they've been up.
Yeah, they did not lead in regulation in Game 3. They only led after the first possession in Game 5. And so the refs tonight, this doesn't matter to me, but it matters to Willu. Zach Zarba, Curtis Blair, and Bill Kennedy. So Blake Murphy, friend of the program, tweeted that out, and someone replied, "Do we know the alternate?" I love people wanting to know the alternate. Shouts to ref culture, man. It's my favorite.
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't matter this much, but it kind of does. But in any case, like let's just have the players decide it. And if the Sixers win it, I mean, they got 2 days off. I think that's going to really help them. They're the older team.
Sure.
They got fewer guys in their rotation, so like, you know, you got more time for them to rest and respond. We'll see how it goes. Toronto weather has not been friendly the last 2 nights, so I don't imagine as much activity happening, quite frankly. But, you know, even putting aside all of that, I need Pascal to come out and respond in the same way that he did in games 4 and 5. I thought that was awesome to see. I think if he can do that again. Scotty Barnes' ankle getting better and better. He said he's feeling healthy, both mentally and physically. And you know, we're gonna see a little more of the what I've coined the Rakakuni combo.
Yes,
between Thad Young feeding Chris Boucher nonstop, and you know, Gary Trent's getting healthier now, and you know, you have the big lineup still. Unfortunately, Fred. I mean, look, I don't know what the specific. I guess the specific update, he's doubtful, but Fred himself did say that he's pretty much out for the series, and he'd probably be optimistic to come back next round. But we'll see. Obviously, everyone fights through injuries in the playoffs. If he's available, we'll see what happens. But ultimately speaking, the Raptors have a really good formula right now, and they just got to go out there and execute the game plan. That's why I feel less nervous about it. When I feel like the Raptors just got to go out there and execute the game plan and don't have to worry about like this and that and whatever. It's like, that's when I feel good.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That's my feeling heading to Game 6. What's your feeling heading to Game 6?
No, I'm with you. This is just a very low pressure Game 6. Like, it's just weird.
So you want to come play basketball at the park with me?
No, I gotta do some work.
We have 7 hours.
Yeah, well, I gotta get a 5-hour nap in as well. By the way, we asked yesterday, real life equivalent of blowing a 3-0 lead. Someone said talking about having ramen with Utah all season and then not being able to pull it off.
Come on. I thought you were going to say working at EY and then working out.
Oh, anyways. Happy Thursday, everybody.
Happy Thursday.
Let's go Raptors. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
That does for us today. I'm your host, Walu. That's Alex Wong. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. And please rate and review our show. By the way, Alex, number 2 in the country right now. Our show. A basketball show is number 2 in the podcast
So top
charts.
2, and we are 2.
Yes, that's right. So make sure you rate, review, subscribe. Thanks again to my producer and co-host, Alex Wong. To our guests, Malcolm Miller, Chris Herring, and Jessica Sharl. To our board producer, Lance Kennedy, and Jennifer Rolnick for helping us behind the scenes with the YouTube stream. I'll talk to you soon.